we all want to move on to the next topic.
Sure, you pick now, John.
It's my pick. Let's go with Andy, man.
All right. So,
What do you got, Andy? What do you got for us?
so I guess one of the things in terms of like what the interesting expectations or surprises may be this year is really how Jorge is going to adopt to the Aprilia and what step forward Aprilia may make. So I think so. First of all, I don't think Aprilia has like any potential money issues. Certainly think they have the desire to be a front runner. And I don't know if we've really seen like what the Aprilia is capable of in the last couple of years, because with both Aleix and Maverick Vinales on that bike, and then with Raul and Miguel Oliveira on the satellite team, like with Aleix and Maverick, it always seemed like in order to get the most out of that bike, everything had to be in all the planets had to be in perfect alignment. They were so if one thing wasn't right or they didn't things didn't go right, their race was gone. I mean, I think there was a race it was at Aragon, I think that I can't remember if it was last year or the previous year where basically Maverick pulled in like 2/3 of the way through the race because he just didn't have any feel for the bike. And um Aleix has always complained about that as well. So part of it, is it the bike or is it the rider? Because I think Maverick definitely tends to everything's got to be perfect for him, and I think Leish is a little very particular as well. So is it really the rider or is it the bike? I mean, I think Aprilia's made a lot of steps forward, but I know that Jorge Martin is going to push. He's going to squeeze that lemon and get every drop of performance out of that bike. Now, is that enough? Uh, is it a combination of rider or bike? So it's going to be interesting to see like how he does on that bike in the first few rounds, and if he gets, and certainly there's going to be some tracks which not only he likes or maybe are favorable toward the Aprilia that he's going to do well. But is the bike the jack of all trades? Like we talked about, like Ducati has become a very comprehensive, general, well-rounded motorcycle. Um, and I'm not sure. So what's going to be interesting to me is where does Aprilia stack up? Because obviously, yeah, Martin, and certainly he's got a chip on his shoulder, like we talked about. I mean, he would love nothing better than to get in it with any of the Ducatis and show, hey, you guys made a mistake not signing me. So he's going to absolutely, and plus that number one plate is going to be pretty heavy on his bike, but he's going to be. So there won't be any excuses, with him in terms of motivation. He is absolutely going to go hog wild and get the most out of that bike. But is it enough? So is it really the bike? Has Aprilia really developed that bike where it's comparable with the Ducati or not? That's good. What I think is going to be really interesting this year to me, like how he does on the bike and how Aprilia has progressed.
And I think like it's weird like watching Jorge Martin in like his interviews and everything because he has that sort of same attitude that had mentioned that Marquez had, where he's saying, we have to be realistic, and I have to see how I adapt to the bike. But then he'll go and say, but the bike has the best front end feel that I've ever felt, right? But it's all kind of, he's not just outright saying, I'm going to defend this. I mean, he's being very realistic, and I don't know if that's a good sign or not coming from a defending champion, right?
Or is he
And,
sandbagging?
yeah,
Like well, I
is
think
it
you.
mind games? Yeah, I mean,
That's right. Like I think Tristan mentioned
mm,
like Marquez, like, oh, well, we're way off pace, and we didn't qualify well. He's back on row 13, and he ends up on the podium. It's
yeah, and see, that's why I don't know. It's hard to read. Like, is he sort of managing expectations or is it mind games? And I'm kind of inclined to think that it's managing expectations because we've seen the Aprilias run. They aren't really good, like in any category, right? It's just kind of an average bike, and then we see once again those tracks that the riders like that the bike performs, and then it just doesn't seem to perform. It doesn't seem to be dialed in most of the time, and it's making me think about a discussion that me and Tristan had about BMW and World Superbike when Top Rack made his switch. and we were saying that whether Toprak would succeed on the bike or not would come down to the potential of the bike and if he could extract that potential.
Hmm.
Now, I think we both agreed that the BMW at the time had massive loads of untapped potential, and then that played out this previous season. But I don't get that same vibe from the Aprilia. Like, I don't feel that there's untapped potential in that bike. I think that where it is now is, I mean, maybe I think Jorge Martin might get it to be might be a little bit more consistent just with how good he is and how much better of a rider he is than Aleix and Maverick put together.
Hmm.
But I just I don't see him having, a very strong season on that bike based on how I saw it run this previous season.
It almost looked like they took a step back last year.
Yeah.
Um, the results seemed a lot more consistent in 23 than they did in 24. They were the second best manufacturer in 23, and then last year the second best was KTM. Um, I think, as long as I've got all my facts still straight in my head. But so it really kind of felt like we talked about Aprilia a lot in 23, and then 24 it was just kind of an afterthought type of thing. And I get the feeling with the weight of that number one plate, the general uh, disdain, let's say, that Martin has for Ducati right now. I'm expecting him trying to do too much on that bike, and I'm expecting a very inconsistent and long season for him. Um, I'm expecting a lot of gravel trips. And I get it. He's gonna be pushing and trying to extract every little thing he can out of that bike. But like you say, I don't think the bike is there. And I think with everything going on and the grudge he's carrying into this year, he's gonna keep asking it. He's gonna keep asking too many questions of the bike, and I don't think it's gonna pan out.
Plus, yeah, that's great points. Plus, he's going to need time to adapt to this bike. I mean, he's only ridden the Ducati for whatever 4 or 5 years, and so certainly, I mean, just like with Marquez transitioning to Ducati, I mean, I don't know, maybe they're parallel, but I know these guys are professionals. They're the best riders in the world, but certainly transitioning to a whole different team, a whole different platform in terms of riding is there's I wouldn't say till it's going to take a few rounds even just to get used to what he can do, but I can absolutely see that when he sees people clearing out in the front, he's going to push that uh, Aprilia beyond its limits. And yeah, I could absolutely see that happening. But who knows? I mean, what do you guys think about Bezzecchi? I mean, he's another one. It's like he just did not get. He had a great season in 23, and then last year he was nowhere to be found on the 20 on the 24. Well, on the 23 bike, the 20 yes, the 23 bike in 24. He just did not ever gel with that bike throughout the entire season. So we'll see. Interesting to see what he does on the Aprilia also. Maybe that's more up his alley. Who knows?
John and I spoke about Bezzecchi early or maybe even midway into last season, how at the beginning of 23, Pecco struggled with the 23 Ducati. And he said there was no front feel and he couldn't do anything with it. And then he just, like a light switch, figured it out and it changed. Bezzecchi never got there. It
Mhm.
was that was a painful season to watch. Um, it's a lot easier to watch someone like Marini having a painful season or mirror on the Honda because it's like, okay, well, the Honda's just hot garbage. But I think watching Bezzecchi struggle with that 23 Ducati last year was probably the most painful thing to see of everything because he'd shown the potential he had, and man, that bike just didn't work with him. So I am actually everyone's talking about Martin, but I am actually very curious to see what he does this year. And And just going back to your initial point, I think this is going to be a very interesting season to see just how good the Aprilia actually is. I
Hmm.
think Vinales has always been a head case. The second he I don't even think things are necessarily going wrong. I think the second he perceives that things are going wrong, that's it. Everything's over. Aleix, I mean, in MotoGP years, he was ancient and he'd been on the same bike for so long that you kind of start to wonder, does he even know what a good bike should feel like anymore? Um, so I do love it when a team has a hard reset like this with the riders and you finally get an opportunity to see what's going on.
Yeah, that's interesting because I mean, the only consistency is Raul Fernandez on that Aprilia. I mean, you're gonna have Iagura come in, Bezzecchi come in, and um, Jorge Martin come in. So they're gonna have a lot of different ideas in terms of the development of the bike. But during the season, that's not. I mean, yeah, it's moving the needle, but there's only the time for development is kind of over when the season starts. So it's going to be interesting to get different ideas as opposed to just Alicia's input on the bike. So certainly I think that'll help improve things just from just a different perspective on what to improve on the bike. But it's going to take time, just like anything else. And meanwhile, Ducati keeps marching forward, and they've established a very logical and very well laid out plan in terms of bike development. It's taken them 10 years, but look where they are now.
Yeah, and then with Aprilia, you get 3 new guys on the bike that haven't been on the bike before. That's probably going to be 3 different ideas of how they want the bike set up and what they think the issues are. Hopefully, Aprilia can manage that situation too. I mean, I guess that's just business as usual for a team, but I mean, these guys, they're not slow. And then, it can also create a situation where, hey, they might want to prioritize like Jorge and his opinions, for example. And then we see the bike start trending in one direction. I guess kind of allegedly like what was going on with Repsol Honda when, Mark Marquez was at the height of his powers and this and that. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they manage that situation. I mean, you have a manufacturer with one guy that's been on the bike before, right? One guy that's sticking around in Raul, and then 3 new guys that are all going to be quick. It's going to be interesting to see definitely where they fall once all the chips are out.
Yeah, I guess logic would say that just like what Honda did is that Jorge Martin's opinion is going to carry a lot of the
Yeah,
weight
pick one.
because
Yeah.
that's right, because has the most potential to win with that bike. So whatever he wants is probably going to carry a lot of weight compared to the other ones. I don't think they'll like completely discount what the other riders say, but it may certainly be biased. And if they're all pushing and noting the same thing, the front end's great, the rear is terrible, or whatever, then obviously that's an easy decision in terms of making changes to the bike. But if you have contrasting opinions, there's they're going to give the nod to whatever Jorge thinks, in my opinion, because it only makes sense. They want to make he's the most potential to put that bike on the box and follow his direction in terms of how he likes the bike set up.
Yeah, and man, if I were Jorge too, I don't even know that. And despite even if I felt terrible about how Ducati had treated me and how they passed me over for a ride, they still offered him the factory bike and Pramac, right? I don't even know that I would have left Ducati to begin with if I was Jorge. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just business, right? I mean, surely he can understand that decision. I mean, it was a silly decision in my opinion. I mean, like you said, Jorge did everything perfect. He should have got that spot. But Ducati went with Mark. But if I were in his shoes, man, I'm gonna put that aside. It's gonna stay business. Give me my factory bike. I'm gonna stay where I'm at, and then I'll beat y'all again next season because he's just build. Once you get your world title, you're just building a legacy at that point. I mean, what
Right.
else do you have to prove, right?
Well,
Can't
it's
be
just like
too
this. It's just like, pull the string. I want a factory ride. I want a factory ride. That's it's to him. His priorities were the factory ride as opposed to staying on a bike and a team that he was comfortable with and familiar with. Who am I to judge? But I mean, that's my opinion.
yeah,
Well,
factory ride, factory bike.
it's worked out really well for Marini.
That's Andy's favorite person.
Yeah, that's right. So I want that factory. Well, be careful what you wish for. Well, him and Rents, he wanted a factory ride also. I mean, he actually had a factory ride with Suzuki, but yeah, I just it's kind of like nails on the chalkboard for me. I mean, I think but again, I'm looking from the outside in. But when these
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
say that I want a factory ride, it's just like, really? You think are the benefits that great? Is the salary that much better? I don't know if the salary is 3 times what it is on a factory ride than it is a satellite team. I have no idea. Are the benefits really that much better in terms of support and just prestige? Who knows?
I mean, I think it was that Mark Marquez documentary on Amazon. I've watched so much MotoGP content, but I think it was that documentary where he was talking about the differences between the a satellite and a factory, and he was saying that the differences are there just as far as the personnel and the caliber of the personnel. They said little things like hospitality, right, and having certain types of food when you're on the road, and taking a plane versus taking a bus. You know what I mean? And they were saying, and it might have been another writer that said it, but yeah, they were just explaining like the differences are there, and all those little small things definitely contribute to the championship and the overall performance of the rider. I mean, so it definitely makes sense to want to desire the factory, but once again, at what cost, right?
Yeah,
Am I going to sacrifice a package that I know works, that I'm pretty much flawless on,
yeah.
right,
Like,
just to get that factory seat?
didn't Marquez at one race have some kind of weird like wheel issue or something, where the wheel was cracked? Oh, that's right. I think he ended up with like a tire pressure warning. I don't know, something, some freak mechanical incident with a wheel or something happened during a race. And I was just thinking, it's like that would never happen on a factory team. I mean, if they had like a suspect wheel, they would just freaking toss the thing and get a brand new one out of the box or something. I mean, it's just like, because no cost is going to be, they're not cutting corners on cost with the factory team. It's like they want that
Yeah.
everything to be perfect. Mechanics. I mean, you're gonna have like a squad of mechanics. They're gonna have obviously more personnel in terms of just wrenching, but also looking at data, looking at hospitality, all the everything to coordinate making that rider as comfortable as possible. I could certainly see that as appealing. But Jorge has been in that. He knows the drill with the Promac team. He's familiar with everyone. They have a good rapport in terms of what he wants and everything. But who knows? I guess we'll see. It'll be really interesting. Again, I'm looking forward to the season in terms of how a lot of these things pan out. And maybe we'll recap a year from now and say, "Oh, we got this right. We were way off on that." Who knows?
yeah, yeah. Well, and part of the difference too is, I think about Marini. He was getting podiums on the Ducati. I bet that personal sponsorship money was a lot better when you're grabbing, you know, 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 podiums a year between Sundays and Saturdays versus, uh, 22nd, 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 DNF, 22nd, just dead last every single race.
And with how good they do on the Ducatis too, I'm sure that's boosting the ego just a little bit as well. It's like, well, I can recreate these results on anything, right?
See,
Yeah, yeah, I could fix it, Honda.
Yeah, I can fix it.
that's going to be the big pitfall for Jorge on the Aprilia. Not as obviously the Aprilia is a much better bike, but you know how it is. He's into that. I can do this. I did this. I won this whatever sprint race 3 times in a row or whatever. I can win this on the Aprilia, and he's going to push. And when he sees people, creeping out, pulling the gap on him, it's going to be that red mist. And he's like, what's going on here? I know I can win this race. Maybe he can, but maybe the bike is not capable of doing that. And
Yeah.
it's, again, that just shows you what Marquez did on that Honda. I mean, he was blowing the rest of the other Hondas away, and once he left, there was a huge gap. And what is I don't even know what Honda's best finish was last year. I mean, it couldn't. I think Zarco got a couple top tens maybe, but
He kept them
Yeah.
relevant, yeah, single-handedly.
yeah, that was the high water mark, maybe
Yeah.
like an eighth or ninth place.
They were happy to get Zarco into Q2, like the 3 or 4, like, or well, what the 2 or 3 times that he did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That was like
Yeah.
the highlight of the season. So it's going bad when like the qualifying, right, is like, hey, we're making progress.
right.
Yeah, they're throwing a party when he makes it into Q2, and he's on the satellite team, and he rinsed the factory team all year. I think
Oh,
Marini
stroke him,
got,
yeah.
like, 1 point or something all season?
I think eight. When I have to look it up, but I think it's a total of it's less than 10. I'm pretty sure. So
Ugh,
8 points total out of 20 weekends. I mean, that's rough, man.
with sprints and Sunday races.
Right.
Mm. Yeah, that hurts.
So anyway, those are my thoughts on the Aprilia Jorge Martin. That's really interesting. What you guys think as well. That's well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will see.